Gee, I wonder what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried. You know, the FTX guy who Thanos snapped billions. Let's find out.
This video is brought to you by Babbel. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. Alright, today, once again, we are delving into the murky world of FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, and securities fraud.
Murky world of Sam Bankman-Fried is an understatement. Just yesterday, I read an article that he seemingly has a sex cult or something like that. And that guy has man boobs. And he's 20-something and uses soy on a regular basis. Money truly can't solve any issue, it seems like.
Covered the topic twice so far, but recently, as the dust settles on new information, I deliberately held off as a result of uncertainty. A lot of what we are learning right now changes very, very quickly, and I don't necessarily want to just parrot breaking news from other sources. In truth, I've had a number of people reach out with insider information, but by the time I properly vetted those messages or looked into the various different claims, someone else had usually broken the news themselves. Admittedly, I got pretty frustrated by this, since the people breaking news were often doing so without proper due diligence, sometimes even...
Do you honestly expect news networks to actually check their sources? No. Usually their source is someone who has intimate knowledge of the situation, and that means a guy who knows a guy whose housekeeper's second husband's stepchild knows a guy who knows a guy. That's usually their source. It's amazing what media can get away nowadays. This is why we watch, by the way, YouTube videos, because legacy media does not care about anything even remotely truthful or factual nowadays.
Just posting directly to social media and then clarifying after the fact that they had no actual clue what was real. They just heard it from some random person. I probably got a little bit more agitated by this than I honestly should have, so I kind of backed off from coverage. But today I want to talk about an angle that feels quite a bit more impactful and also seems to be hovering just outside the spotlight for many different news channels. Before going further, this video is brought to you by Babbel, which is genuinely the best language tool I've personally ever used. I'm not very good at learning.
Always take these things with a grain of salt. Most likely, that was in the pitch that he needs to say, and without that, the ad would not be authorized. So, take that with a pinch of salt.
Languages. I took French for almost 10 years and picked up basically nothing. I was a kid, I didn't pay attention, excuses, but now that I'm older, I actually do want to learn another language, and Babbel is very clearly working better for me when it comes to language retention and memorization. Babbel is actually proven to help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, focusing on usable conversation.
You can get private courses from me for, I don't know, whatever sum you want, and I can guarantee you will start speaking basic shit in a matter of minutes, because basic stuff means you can say your name or something like that, or ask someone direction. So, Also, just from a scientific point of view, learning languages is hard when you're an adult. Learning languages when you're a kid is super easy. I picked up on my 2 extra languages literally from watching television as a child. Oh yeah, let that sink in. Americans don't even know 2 languages. I got 2 extra languages. I know 3. Just because I watched television in different languages as a child. I don't even remember the moment I started to understand those languages. I just watched cartoons. And cartoons don't really say a lot of sentences. It's usually just here from Johnny Bravo,
and common phrases. The lessons are designed by actual language teachers to be as effective as possible. Lessons will very quickly prepare you to have an actual real-world conversation about anything from travel to business or even relationships, and since I will be taking a trip to Europe sometime in the moderate future, I've decided to personally start learning German. I'm not very far yet, but I only just started...
You know where German is actually useful? In fucking Germany. That's the only place German is useful in. Everywhere else, English just does fine, my dude.
And kind of already seem to have a better grasp of the language.
Unless it's Eastern Europe.
Than years of in-person learning when I was younger. Maybe that's because it's on the computer and I have a natural affinity for digital learning, but still, the techniques they use are very...
Digital learning is not an actual thing. Learning is categorized by mostly memory of what you hear or what you see, or by doing it yourself. There's no such thing as digital learning.
Very effective for me. I use Babbel on the computer, like I do everything, but they also have a very well-polished smartphone app that is extremely convenient. I'm guessing most people will use it there. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the entire world, and after using it for a number of hours in advance of this promotion, I can easily see why that is. If you click the link down below, you can get 60% off your subscription and start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Again, link down below in the description for 60% off your subscription. Big thank you to Babbel for sponsoring the channel.
If you want to waste your money, go for it.
Let's really begin. Quick rundown for context, since the entire situation is a rat's nest of lies and deception. FTX is now one of the highest profile bankruptcies in American history.
The highest.
How we got here, what caused it, and where it all ultimately ends is kind of up for debate, but for the moment we can see a series of
Wait, maybe it's not the highest, but it's definitely the most complex because they literally had no bookkeeping. Intentionally.
Connected decisions and actions that paint a very troubling picture. Initially, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried played dumb. I'm sorry, I know that's a very ineloquent way of saying it, but that's honestly just what happened. SBF decided to tell the world through repeated public interviews that he simply didn't know what was happening. It was all just one big, innocent misunderstanding or mistake, and he intended...
That's what Jack Dorsey is trying to tell everyone now on Twitter, that previously when he was the head, that he didn't know what's happening in Twitter. Works like a charm.
...to make everyone whole. However, U.S. prosecutors, driven by an unknown combination of factors, appear to have largely disregarded this, and legitimate charges have finally been handed down against him. According to an unsealed U.S. indictment, Sam Bankman-Fried is being charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, multiple counts of conspiracy to launder money, as well as
makes sense.
Charges of commodity, securities, and campaign finance fraud.
Makes
In total,
sense.
that's well over 100 years of prison time in possible sentencing, which is fantastic. But rather than focus...
It's funny because he may actually sit that time, unless Maxine Waters, the woman who blew him a kiss, who is also some magically the one who is gonna make the biggest decisions when it comes to his case because she's the one overseeing them. Gee, I wonder if that's just a coincidence.
Focusing on the immediate surface level developments, I want to dig deeper into what has now happened alongside all of this. To be perfectly clear here, the story is extensive and has become effectively impossible to include everything in a single video. Not just...
The story actually has gotten a little bit more fun because the guy could potentially be Eibsteined in prison, if you know what I mean.
For me, but probably for any commentator out there. FTX International and Alameda Research were effectively differentiated by name alone. Money from customers at FTX was used without any safeguards whatsoever at Alameda Research, while figures like Sam Bankman-Fried, his parents, and other executives took out personal loans paid for with customer assets, bought company property, quote-unquote, for themselves in their own name, and spread capital across both sides of the political aisle in America. Essentially, according to John J. Ray III, acting CEO of FTX during these bankruptcy proceedings, brought in specifically for that.
He seemingly has 300 mil worth of real estate in the Bahamas or the Caribbean, which currently is the place where he is in prison because he did the dumbest thing ever. But, let's see what happens here, and then I'm going to talk about it.
That purpose, this is worse than Enron. Quote, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure in corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here." End quote.
Yep.
Now, that's old news, yes, but it's also important for context because FTX is now a nexus of corruption, not only in the finance and crypto industry, but also in the world of politics.
True.
And that is the angle I would like to focus on for today. There are, of course, other interesting developments as well, such as the fact that Caroline Ellison, former CEO of Alameda Research, was recently actually physically seen in New York City, presumably testifying to law enforcement in exchange for some sort of preferential treatment.
She's testifying most likely against Sam Bankman-Fried because she's involved in a little bit of a lesser problem because still... that guy was the main guy who is gonna take the fall for it. So she's most likely just testifying against him, so she gets a little bit less. Because that guy is... he already did this, by the way. He tried to throw her under the bus. So, if she doesn't testify against him after he tried to do that, oh my god, that's so stupid.
She made a deal, is what people are speculating. But for right now, I want to go back
100%.
in time, establish a foundation, and then speculate on what may be in store, honestly, based on a series of connected data points that paint a very troubling picture. To explain this, we need to start with a confusing but seemingly isolated decision on November 10th of 2022. November 10th was, for the most part, a day of wild speculation. At such an early stage of catastrophe, no one really knew what was actually happening. Rumors and conspiracies went viral, misinformation and flat-out guesses were being spread with no remorse or regard for the truth as a way to farm
Seems like just a normal day in the world, honestly.
social media engagement. But as the whirlwind of speculation reached a peak or a crescendo, something happened. FTX International, on its official social media page, said the following, quote, "Per our Bahamian HQ's regulation and regulators, we have begun to facilitate withdrawals of Bahamian funds. As such,
He's gonna talk about the thing I was hoping, because this is huge. This is why I said he could Epstein himself in the prison, you know? He's gonna talk about this 100%. Fingers crossed.
we may have seen some withdrawals processed by FTX recently as we complied with the regulators." End quote. That's interesting because clarified by the actual Bahamian SEC, they have ordered no such action. Think about that, and I do sincerely believe that this is one of the most overlooked threads of the entire FTX disaster in and of itself. FTX opens withdrawals for Bahamian citizens while directly lying to the world as to the cause. Why is that? Well, to further understand, we now need to remember that during the course of these chaotic revelations, something else also happened. In the very early stages of bankruptcy, a sort of dark finance battle began to take place between an unknown hacker, this is some speculation as well, draining funds from FTX, and the Bahamian regulators themselves, who eventually seized control of a portion of assets. The details of this are somewhat nebulous. No one actually has the full story. It's an ongoing situation. And personally, I'm not as qualified to discuss that particular angle today. But the important thing to remember is that there was a battle over funds taking place, and that FTX was openly lying, brazenly, I might add, about why they had chosen to open withdrawals, specifically in only the Bahamas. So why does it matter? It matters because during an interview with Tiffany Fong, as Sam went on this ridiculous media tour, honestly acting more like a celebrity who just dropped a new mixtape than a financial criminal who had stolen billions.
He has done so many interviews, and that's so hilarious because you just need just the slight shred of common sense to understand, hey, wait a minute, maybe me just saying random stuff to random people can only do damage to me, not actually absolve me from my crimes, perceived crimes, I should say.
While most interviewers simply fawned over him and used the exposure for social media growth in a selfish way, during one of the rare interviews where someone asked a decent fucking question, shout out to Tiffany Fong in that regard here, Sam said the following.
Withdrawals were opened first to citizens of Antigua or Bahamas, yes.
Bahamas.
Yes, and then the regulators or securities said that that was not approved.
Yeah, I think I might have taken, I think, the right decision.
Wait,
It
sorry?
was, all right, so I ran it, I gave them a heads up, a one-day heads up that we were going to do it. They didn't say yes or no. They didn't respond, and then we did it. The reason I did it was critical to the exchange being able to have a future, because that's where I am right now.
Bullshit.
And
Oh,
you do not want to be in the country with a lot of angry people in it, and you do not want your country to be incorporated in a country with a lot of angry people in it. And so it was, realistically speaking, it's shitty, but like, yeah, the pathway forward for FTX involved Bahamians not being pissed at it.
Now, let's be clear.
okay, let's see what Echelon says about this. Because when I heard this part, when I heard that this is actually a thing, that he's in the Bahamas, I almost fell down. I needed to take a break for a minute, because that, for a billion reasons, is one of the stupidest things that you could ever do in your life. You're gonna get the U.S. is gonna get extradition treaty with any country he moves to, unless he does the classical Chinese multimillionaire thing where they just disappear, and after a year or two there's sightings of them in the Philippines or any other country that has a massive influx of lady boys. Oh my God, the fact that he didn't go to the USA. The place where he would literally have FBI protection. And by the way, if you don't believe me, obviously no one would say that he had FBI protection, but trust me, he would have FBI protection. This is how these things work. Oh my God, the fucking fact that he stayed in the Bahamas. Let's hear what Echelon has to say, because I will have so much to say about that stupidity.
The assertion by FTX officially was that the Bahamian regulators had directed them to open withdrawals. But now, Sam was saying that it was, quote, critical to the exchange being able to have a future because that's where I am right now. And you do not want to be in a country with a lot of angry people in it. And you don't want
No. He could be in the US. The thing here is you don't want to be in a country where corruption is literally the name of the game. Not open corruption, but almost 100% full-blown open corruption is the name of the game. You do not want to be in a country like that if you have potential access still to millions, almost maybe still billions of money. Oh, that's such a stupid choice.
For a company to be incorporated in a country with a lot of angry people in it, end quote. This really is, in my opinion, the most intriguing part of the entire story. Sam Bankman-Fried, as we now know, was operating something like a $30 to $40 billion crypto empire out of the Bahamas, and yet their accounting department was using Slack and QuickBooks.
This one is unusual, and it's unusual in the sense that literally, there's no record.
That's the guy who's supposed to fix everything. Well, not fix everything, but he's supposed to be the one who looks over things and understands what the fuck is actually happening at FTX.
Keeping whatsoever. It's in the absence of record keeping. Employees would communicate, invoicing and expenses on Slack, which is, essentially a way of communicating for chat rooms. They use QuickBooks.
Look at this guy. He's having fun because this is a new interesting experience. Because he understands everything that's going. He can't just say, oh yeah, it's full. By the way, the people who communicated all of this, if there is any link to anyone doing anything, those people are also getting jail time. You will never hear about it because they're extremely low profile people, but those people most likely can also get jail time. And some of them will have to pay fines, some of them will have to go to jail. You will never hear about it because they're low profile people, because it doesn't matter if you're doing it under someone, you're still doing something illegal.
A multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks. QuickBooks. Nothing against QuickBooks, very nice tool, just not for a multi-billion-dollar company.
According to John J. Ray III, current CEO of FTX, in his Senate testimony, which I believe occurred yesterday, and Sam Bankman-Fried was supposed to be there until he was arrested, but more on that later on. This is unprecedented and bizarre. The level of accounting failure here is apparently historic, and all of this was happening in the Bahamas, which is widely regarded as a country that is, quote, struggling with corruption in its government.
Struggling with corruption in its government is very mild. There's a reason everyone goes to those places to open businesses, because you can just pay people off. There are these places where you can keep boats, pay people off, and, just do things extremely easily and never get fined or never have any problems. Well, admittedly, he's gonna have problems, but, still, if you're not such a level of disaster, it's fine. It's gonna be fine. That's how these places operate. That's how those places work.
According to the 2022 Investment Climate Statement from the U.S. Department of State, the Bahamas now struggles with a variety of problems, including campaign finance reform, corruption, and bribery. What's more, over the past several years, there have been a number of corruption charges handed down that have all either ended in acquittals or been dismissed, with several high-profile resignations in tow after allegations of corruption broke, but were never actually fully pursued. These include the Deputy Prime Minister as well as the Minister of Financial Services in 2020. Now, keep in mind, this is
I guess he's just painting how corrupt that place is, but I don't think there's a reason to paint it.
Time frame where FTX was operational, growing, and presumably circumventing finance law in Hong Kong, later moving officially and incorporating in the Bahamas, ending with a...
Hong Kong is also a place where you can do some financial trickery because it has you can't really say looser regulations, but there's some different things at play that can allow you to do some bullshit trickery in Hong Kong.
$30+ billion empire built on nothing but lies. Here's where things really get interesting. Less than a day before SBF was set to appear in front of a Senate committee in the United States, he was officially arrested in the Bahamas, supposedly at the behest of the United States. On the surface, that's nothing major, but what happened?
That is bullshit. the U.S. would want him to be delivered to them. The U.S. would bag him and tagging on that on. Okay, this is where I'm going to step in, because this is huge. Okay, FTX is Sam Bankman-Fried is a fucking idiot. He stayed in one of the most corrupt places in the world, still having access to money, and while he's a fugitive in the US, no one knows can he make the US halt. He says he can, but there's absolutely no proof of it. You're staying in one of the most corrupt places on the world, where persons of interest can literally take advantage of it and take you out. If you own 300 million in properties, it doesn't matter. Some corrupt official can literally just stake you in, and you can't do anything about it because you're not one of those corrupted officials. He got arrested because I think potentially they are trying to get all that money out of him. Because let's be honest, he's taken into prison, and by the way, he's taken into a really shitty place into prison. Like, that's the place you definitely are not expected to come out alive in a lot of cases. And he's mostly there because he understands that he's gonna be dead there sooner or later. He probably already saw someone get raped or killed. Oh shit, demonetized. In front of him in that place, because that prison is not a good place to be. And he's most likely scared. And he's most likely... There's a huge chance people are trying to get all the money out of him, because we don't currently know if he actually has enough to make the U.S. citizenry whole of the people who seemingly lost money. And that's the big thing. If he has some money left, he can just, send it, lose it, or whatever, and it's all gonna be fine, and nothing can be done about it. And then, after it's done, well, he can just die in a brutal murder in prison. It's absolutely great. And this is the thing. How do you have so little brain capacity to actually stay in that country? The US is literally gonna get you out of any country in the world almost because of extradition treaties. And you have a favorable jury that's gonna decide how actually innocent or guilty you are in this case. And it's gonna be run by Maxine Waters, his best friend, pretty much, because there's multiple pictures, he's a donor to them, all of that good stuff. He was gonna run scot-free. Instead, he chose to stay in a country where his life could be potentially at risk, because there are people who are most likely gonna want to take advantage of this situation. In the US, he would get FBI protection or some kind of special protection that he wouldn't even know about, and he would be absolutely fine and chilling. Probably nothing bad would happen to him, but now this is happening. Unless the US has instantaneously intervened in this situation, he's absolutely fucked. It's so bad. It's the stupidest decision you could ever make. Because even in the worst case scenario, well, not in the worst case scenario, this is probably the best case scenario, it's the Bahamas! If corrupt officials actually took him in, they're gonna seize the stuff that he has bought. And I said previously, he has bought things seemingly up to 300 million worth in the Bahamas. It's insane. And all of that can be seized. Like, the guy's a literal money bag with absolutely no safeties. It's the dumbest thing ever. Like, this guy is a literal moron. This is why there is a theory that he is just a fall guy for someone actually smart doing all of this. Because he is just doing the most insanely irrational, dumb decision making now possible. And, like, no joke.
And afterward is far more important. Once arrested, Sam Bankman-Fried was denied bail, leading him to be housed for an unknown period of time.
Oh, I actually didn't know that he was denied bail.
Right now, in the Fox Hill, Bahamas Penitentiary. Far from a simple detail...
And that's a really bad place.
Fox Hill is actually a very important name here, because Fox Hill is largely regarded as one of the worst prisons on Earth. Now, to be
okay, didn't know it's the worst prison on Earth, but very, very bad place. That part I did know. Not the first time I hear about that place, by the way.
Clear, I don't have sympathy for him right now. This isn't me wringing my hands about how his treatment is unfair or inhumane. That's just flat out not my concern. But what is my concern is the potential reality we see when connecting all of these dots. According to coverage in 2019, Fox Hill was, quote, not fit for humanity. The cells were, at the
Nothing's in the Bahamas fit for humanity, for being real.
time, crowded by sometimes twice as many inmates as they were designed to hold. The entire living barracks is infested with rats, and the prisoners are made to use buckets as toilets in an environment where rape is so prominent that the prison has its own isolated and untreated AIDS epidemic. I can't actually
You know you're a special place when you have your own microclimate.
read the majority of first-hand accounts here because the video would be removed from YouTube. But suffice it to say, this particular prison, as of 2019, was one of the worst places
Barbados today, jeez.
on the planet. Thing is, that hasn't changed. According to testimony in 2021, the prison had gotten worse, not better. And now there was a serious problem with inmates.
It can't get better in a place that's corrupt, by the way. Things like this never get better in governments that are absolutely run by corruption. Corruption seeps in at start. You know, corruption is actually good because it allows you to do things. You know, if the government and everything is not controlled by corrupt people who only care about lining their pockets, but you know, there may be a little bit corrupt here and there, they're gonna actually get shit done. Corrupt people are the people who get shit done the fastest and the best. But as corruption keeps on happening, the problem is people get in who only care about lining their pockets and doing things like that, and that's where the problems start. Because sooner or later, maybe the people who actually were a little bit corrupt get ousted and replaced by even more corrupt people. And if everyone wants to just line their pockets, improving a prison is never gonna happen ever. Or, you know, in general, improving anything in the country is never gonna happen ever, because that does not line your pockets. And if everyone's corrupt and no one cares about shit, then that you know, nothing's gonna ever get fixed. The only things that are gonna get fixed most likely are the roads, specifically from the houses of important people who want those roads to be pristine because they are corrupt and they can make them that happen. It's insane.
Health, as they were subjected to savage beatings but never treated. Again, I can't read this stuff verbatim or the video would be in violation.
They were never treated I can already guess what's happening there. They were never treated because most likely the medical staff is selling off medical supplies that are still getting delivered time to time to that prison, but they're just selling them off. You know, no one's probably checking who gets treated for anything, so, you know, it's just a write-off. Oh, this guy was here, well, you know, we just used 15 EpiPens on him. Good times.
Of YouTube's community guidelines. It's that bad. So yeah, I'll link sources down below, but I won't go into too much detail right now. The most jarring information I could find when researching this came from Amnesty International in 2003, admittedly a very long time ago, but still probably relevant today, where accounts detailed that prisoners were sometimes left to die in cells, despite known medical conditions, and most importantly, that there was, quote, serious concern around a lack of transparency in the investigation of deaths in custody, end quote.
Obviously.
This matters for one key reason. Sam Bankman-Fried, operating a massive crypto business empire in a country that struggles with political corruption, is now being held in a prison where uninvestigated deaths in custody are normalized. Before being taken to that prison, he specifically lied about
Wait. What do you mean investigate? All of those deaths were 100% natural and not the fault of anyone. They just occurred, you know? Get with the program.
Regulation requirements in order to try and pay Bahamian citizens out of fear, and now resides in a corrupt Bahamian prison.
By the way, when he means citizens, he most likely means a special group of interest. Because, you know, because this is essentially how it works to a degree, right? You go to a very corrupt place to start your very not corrupt business, right? Most likely the authorities know what you are doing. To a degree, because they keep tabs on things like this, because keeping tabs on that means money for them. So they know what's happening. You see where I'm going? And most likely they see an opportunity like this, and there talks with them, they have contacts with them, and at some point most likely they invest it. Because the way that Sam Bankman-Fried run his things is essentially, well, he wanted people to invest so they can try to create more money out of, you know, nothing. By nothing I mean crypto. And he lost their money. The people from the government, the corrupt people who most likely invested. That's most likely how the story here is happening. Now, the only real question is, can the US actually do anything? Or the Bahamas are going to be like, okay, maybe not. Because the US behind the scenes is most likely threatening the Bahamas in some way currently with this situation. This is way too high of a profile case for that to not happen.
After stealing billions of dollars and being brought up on money laundering charges by the United States. Remember, Sam Bankman-Fried donated tens of millions of dollars to United States politicians attempting to control regulation and policy. In the same Voice interview, as previously mentioned, with Tiffany Fong, he also claimed to have given dark money as well to Republicans simply because of the political climate in U.S. media, which, if true, made him probably...
That's actually smart if he did that.
...the biggest political donor in American politics during the most recent cycle.
I donated to both parties. I donated about the same amount to both parties this year. That was not generally known because despite Citizens United being literally the highest profile Supreme Court case of the decade and the thing everyone talks about when they talk about campaign finance, for some reason, in practice, no one can possibly fathom the idea that someone in practice actually gave dark. So, I don't know, all my Republican donations were dark. If you won't see them.
By dark he means maybe personalized gifts, maybe things like that. You know, dark also can literally just be a money drop off somewhere or something like that. It doesn't necessarily mean cold hard cash. It can be some kind of gift. It can be some kind of, you know, a lot of things. Considering they had absolutely no bookkeeping in their company, you know, potentially absolutely everything that was bought, and maybe even a lot of things that, for example, other news media is saying is his 300 million empire in the Bahamas of real estate and whatnot. Maybe some of those things were gifts to some Republican donors. You know, it's that's a possibility. There are many ways to do it because the U.S. is absolutely retarded, right? Let me give you an example why the US is absolutely the most corrupt or stupid country in the world, and you can't say no. You must pick one. Okay, when Trump became president, 50% of the country, roughly, thought that he's a Russian asset. And because of that, there are two situations. One, 50% of the country is retarded because they think that Trump was a Russian asset. Two, Trump actually is a Russian asset, which means the whole country is beyond absolute corrupted because Russia literally controls the US government. You can't not pick one. You must choose one. Either the US is the most corrupt place in the world, or the US is the most stupidest place in the world. There's no alternative in this case. Leave in the comments, by the way, which one you choose. But yeah. The idea that in the U.S., it's such a strange thing. The U.S., everyone in the U.S. just constantly says that there is absolutely no corruption, which is fucking insane. You know, I see some things happen in the U.S. and I'm like, wait a minute, didn't people get arrested in Europe for doing the same shit? And the U.S. is saying, no, there's no problem here, nothing to see here, everything's fine, no corruption, no nothing. And it's like, wait, people are getting arrested in the in the EU for things like this constantly, but when it happens in the U.S., it's like, no corruption, no here. Like in the U.S., it's ingrained so hard that there cannot be any type of or form of actual corruption unless it's Russian puppetry. That it's impossible, which makes it so easy to actually do corrupt things, because the moment there's talk about corruption in the US government or anything like that, you're just called a conspiracy theorist, and you can get away with it. It's like the rhetoric for defense is already there, and it's monumentally strong because it's already has been used so many times and no one fights against it. The US can be abused so hard like this.
And the reason was not for regulatory reasons. It's because reporters freak the fuck out if you donate to a Republican. They're all super liberal and didn't want to have that fight. So I just made all the Republican ones dark. But I was, whatever, second or third biggest Republican donor this year as well. Girls was all for the primaries. They didn't give anything to general elections. They don't give a shit about general elections. That's all that matters. Like, it's the primaries where
Also, no one's talking about this, but this voice recording easily can just show that people are obviously still donating to the Republican Party, because the U.S. is split 50-50 pretty much, right? So, donating to just the Democrats, if you can donate to both, is kind of stupid, especially if you're someone who wants to be wants something out of it, right? And everyone who donates, aka lobbying, wants something out of it. This happens with all kinds of doctors. You can't drug pharmaceutical companies, even in the US, can't technically just give doctors money nowadays and say, hey, promote our thing. But they can gift them shit, like luxury yachts and stuff to promote their things. Or, well, they can't really give yachts, but you kind of get where I'm going with this. There are ways around it. For example, well, a doctor can be invited to a conference of doctors where there's actually no real conference, no real talking about anything. They just get to spend like a week or two in a 5-star luxurious place where they get to spend, I don't know, like let's say a 10,000 a day pocket money or some shit like that, because they're guests and whatnot. There are ways around this.
where you good candidates against bad candidates.
Do we honestly believe that someone like that, operating a company worth tens of billions of dollars, which is now alleged to have committed multiple...
Oh, I didn't finish my point. I hope that they start investigation into dark money getting given to Republicans, because I want the Republican Party out of the game. Okay, the Republican Party, they get power. They absolutely do fucking nothing with it. They don't impeach no one. They don't do anything. They just fucking talk, and they do nothing. I want them out of the game. I want full Democrat power, because I want America to crumble, and Democratic full power grab is the way to go. Let's face it. Do you know how often Democrats have brought forward legislation about making it easier to have making it easy to have playground fun with kids, but you're an adult type of situations? You know how much they have actually made propositions for it? A lot, trust me. So, I see the best way for America to collapse is Democrats getting power, because when they have full power, the silent majority has not mattered a single time in the history of the world, and it will most likely never ever matter. So, considering who are the Democratic biggest voices, think legislations like that are going to actually get passed through with time. And that's going to be the collapse of the USA, because Republicans are most likely going to make death squads or something like that when that starts actually happening, which is going to be blissful fun in my opinion, because America is just a fucking giant circus in my eyes. And as long as if it doesn't produce fun, might as well go to hell.
Counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance fraud was not engaging in similar behavior within the politically corrupt jurisdiction that the company itself was incorporated under? Is that even really a question? Full picture, Sam Bankman-Fried was extremely prolific with donations. He was brazenly open to the idea of buying political influence. His company existed in a corrupt jurisdiction, and when the world came crashing down, he was caught lying about motivation as he panicked, trying to pay out someone in the Bahamas because, quote, you do not want to be in a country with a lot of angry people in it, and you don't want your company to be incorporated in a country with a lot of angry people in it, end quote. Soon after, he is arrested, denied bail, and remanded to custody in one of the worst prisons on Earth where unexplained...
Yeah, it seems Echelon understands where that's going.
...or uninvestigated deaths seem to be rather common. My guess, and keep in mind, this is 100% speculation on my part, it's very possible that he is on the schedule to get Epsteined, whether by function of his...
Told you. Literally told you. It's the writing's on the wall there.
...influence peddling in the Bahamas or the United States, I have no idea. further revelations show that the Bahamas directly endeavored
But
to...
only after the money is extracted. This is not to keep someone silent, by the way. This is the difference between the situations. This is get the money out, and then, because they are assuming that he at the bare minimum has some secret accounts that people don't know about, and now maybe someone else has access to those secret accounts.
Gain access to as much of FTX's existing assets as possible, even after the company had declared Chapter 11 in the United States. There is a battle going on right now between wealthy people or entities or something, maybe even sovereign governments, to recoup as much lost capital as possible.
Maybe, come on, Echelon. Step up your game. It's definitely happening.
And Sam Bankman-Fried, he's caught right in the middle of it. When billions of dollars are at stake, the rules of the game, the ones that you and I play by, completely change. Spurred by some outside force, presumably fear, SBF attempted to appease someone in the Bahamas or some group of people who wanted their money back. And now he's in a corrupt prison under that same corrupt governmental jurisdiction without bail. In the span of roughly 1 month, Sam Bankman-Fried has gone from crypto poster child and political wonderkind to the shadow version of death row.
And if you think this is far-fetched, trust me, nothing's far-fetched in this world. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. There's a chance that someone right next to you is way bigger than you. For example, from my personal experience, I will share this. So, I was working at a place, and that place had a board of directors, and the board of directors were the absolute fucking top dogs there. They were the big shit that anything they said goes. Now, the fun part is that was a semi-government institution, by the way, so the government had oversight over it, so, that's kind of a small thing. So, essentially I'm saying that because people who had government ties could get work there, and it was pretty funny, because they were the absolute top dogs, the board of directors. They were also legitimately chosen most of the time. Not too many were there because they actually had connections in the government, but that's a different story. So, there was this one guy. He worked in a department. He was not even the head of the department. He was just working there. He was pretty old. He was a little bit away from retirement. He was like 3 or 4 years away from retirement. And you know what happens? Every single time he has name day, birthday, or whatever, the whole board of directors fucking comes down with gifts, shakes his hand, and literally licks his asshole clean. And they were the top dogs. He was theoretically not even the leader of a department. He was just some dude there put because he had all the big connections, And that's a great example. You have the absolute top dogs licking the ass of someone who's not even the head of the department. And because he just knew too many important people. Because he legitimately had more power than those people. But he just wanted, something... By the way, this is literally his reasoning to be there. He just wanted to pass the time. He was old. He was like, a little bit from retirement. And he just wanted something to do because he didn't have too much interesting. So he chose just a job where he can just talk to people day in and day out. And, fuck around, essentially. It's insane. And that's the world we live in. That's not a unique story, by the way. I'm sure other people know similar things to happen. But that's insane. And that's the reality of the world we live in.
Maybe it all works out for him. Maybe he comes home, serves a little bit of prison time, and then gets released, but similar to one of those connect-the-dots style children's books, when you've drawn enough lines to see the picture, you can't go back. Basically, the bell cannot be unrung. Sam Bankman-Fried has made enemies, and my guess is that those enemies are currently circling him, attempting to ensure that he never speaks. Not to law enforcement, not to the media, not to anyone really, ever again in his rap...
Huh? No, that does not sound like... No! Wait, no, Echelon, you got it all wrong, my dude. They most likely just want to get money out of him or something out of him. Get him into prison. Considering he has no U.S. protection, theoretically. Well, it's essentially this works like this. If the Bahamas just went after the guy and tried to seize his assets or do anything like that, the US would have a problem with that because, you can't just touch the US billionaire somewhere or, a high ranking CEO like Sam Bankman Fried. But since he currently is under scrutiny and theoretically a potential convict, that can happen. The US can't just tell the Bahamas, hey, fuck off him. He's really precious to us. They can't do that. So the Bahamas are trying to play the extortion route with him. Again, most likely they're going to get money out of him. That's it. Nothing else.
Rapidly shortening lifespan. I could be wrong, but when looking at the entire situation like a puzzle, the pieces fit. And it seems to me that someone, somewhere, has decided that the innocent act has failed, and it's time for damage control. Call it conspiracy.
No, the Bahamas don't need protection. Nothing's gonna happen, because this is no, this is not how it works. The U.S. can't do anything if they find that Bahamas are actually liable in some magical way. Because first of all, they're most likely not actually liable for anything that Sam Bankman-Fried has done. Second of all, it's not like the U.S. can do actually anything about it, because if that guy says, well, it's the Bahamas that did all of this, it doesn't matter because he can't prove anything. The Bahamas will literally shred all of that evidence or pretend that it wasn't even ever filed or ever there. They're completely protected. They don't care. There's no one that needs him to be silenced from the Bahamas, unless someone from the US is paying people in the Bahamas to silence them for them. Now that's a possibility also, probably, but not the part that the Bahamas is scared that the Sammy boy speaks out. No, that's not happening.
Conspiracy, that's fine, time will tell, but sometimes it's fun to look at things and try to piece together some kind of hidden narrative behind the curtain. That's it though. If you want support, there are links down below, primarily locals and patrons.
Like, subscribe, and comment down below, boys, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.